It's a life of a fisherman you wouldn't understand. Something you can't feel on dry land. Gotta get your arms way up in a cage and set the hook on smallmouth bass, and then you'll understand. Gotta get your hands on a Shimano reel and a G-Loom that's trying to bet you like what you feel. Step on a day, give it the world. Hello, welcome to my world.
What's up?
What's up?
Tyler's in the shop tonight, so we figured maybe we could show a little bit of bait making and kind of what Tyler gets into in the winter, and I don't do yet, but maybe get into it at some point. But
Oh yeah, pouring up some. Got a couple of things on the docket this evening. Pouring up some football heads here. Notice that mine have wire weed guards, a little different than most. So I got a 3/8 ounce. So I poured up some of those, ½ ounce, and then these big giant bottom dweller 3/4 ounce. I like it because they have a flat spot on them, and it's really tough for you to see probably, but the hook stands up. Now, does that do that in the water? Don't know. I don't fish clear enough water to tell you, but I like the idea that it's there.
sometimes it doesn't. I mean, it has to, right? It's flat.
Yeah, I mean, the law of averages will tell you that it has to land on there, I guess, what, 1 out of 3 times?
There you go. That and Murphy's Law.
Yeah, that just means everything that can go wrong will. But pouring up some shaky heads, talk to you about Victoria's Secret. Is that you, JR? It's not me. This is Columbia and Shimano.
Victoria's Secret. I wish I was sponsored by them.
I don't think she's got too many secrets left, to be honest with you.
Yeah, she secreted out.
Shaky heads here that I pour up, screw lock. Mine's a little different than most, though. The reason that is that I use a 5/0 hook on all my shaky heads. Most people are like, 5/0? What in the absolute heck? Well, with the Do-It Mold, this is a Do-It Mold Shake It Jig, model SRH6M SLA. I don't have any better lighting here, but you guys can see that. So in here has a bunch of different sizes. Pours from 16th ounce, which I never pour, all the way up to 3/8, which I never pour. I pour 3 sizes only, 3/16, quarter, 5/16, but normally 3/16 and a quarter are my go-to. So the deal is, you're just going to take 5/0. These are Mustad. The series is 32798 BLN. Again, these are 5/0 hooks. You're going to take a screw lock, which looks like this. Got a little hook on top of it. Goes in the mold. That little hook, I used to like painstakingly wrap that little hook around the shank of the hook. And I'm here to tell you that it looks cool when it happens, when it's in there. Makes 0 difference in the mold. Just spent all that time, probably half my life, pouring jigs to not have anything different. So, deal is, once you get done pouring these things, which, by the way, these things are obviously hot. So, there he is, Mark Hickey, Minnow Shaker 50,000. I don't have any minnow shaking heads. I will have, though. I have a ball head with a screw lock like this, except the screw lock is around the shaft of the bait, which will be coming in soon. Take a little pair of gate shears like this. I picked these things up on Amazon. You're going to cut off what's known as the sprue. Goes into the old ball. Has a little rough patch on the top. I'm going to grab a little bit of a bio here. Give it a little bit of a haircut. What's up, Jared? So that's going to do it for one of them. Now, you can get into some serious customization of any kind of jigs. You could do something as simplistic as pouring a swim jig like this right here, which this thing has a just a standard weed guard, like a fiber weed guard they call it. This is really cheap powder paint from Harbor Freight. It's like just called green, but it's kind of a green pumpkin. Doesn't do that well. It's just kind of it's a swim jig, so it's not that doesn't really matter. And then you can step up to a little nicer finish. This is just a stand up, like a brush style jig. This is a powder coat made by Do It Molds, I believe. It's called Protec. I really like it a lot. And then you can buy some stuff that is what's known as vein paint. And you guys are probably not going to be able to see this, but it's black and gold in here. And it's really cool. I'll show you in just a minute what happens. But you get the jigs hot and you dip them in that powder paint, and it causes the paint to attach to the jig, similar to this right here. This is the color of that vein paint. You can see this black and gold. And I had a lot of people at the tackle show this weekend ask me how I achieved that little crackle paint. And it's literally nothing to it. It's the paint, not me. So I'll go ahead and show you that. If I can. You guys can see right here. This is a fluid bed, basically homemade. If I can, it has a big. This is a aerator pump from a fish tank going to this piece of pipe, and inside that pipe is the powder paint. And this thing
is that where you put the Sudafed in?
Yes. Depends on if you're making the blue stuff. You gotta have like, it has to be synthetic if you want to make the blue stuff. You can't use pseudoephedrine. By the way, that's a joke, guys. I'm a high school teacher. I'm not like the Mr. White character, which is weird because I'm a high school teacher. Your last name's White. We could possibly do that.
Yeah. What is that? 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon right there.
Yeah.
So where do you get your lead from normally, Tyler? Do you just buy that, or do you just get it?
Negative. So first off, you make friends with people that own tire shops, they usually have to pay to discard lead. So normally, if you can go ask some people, stay away from Discount Tire in Ironton, by the way. It's my hookup. But normally they will give you bucket loads of wheel weights. Also, the world that we live in is weird. This is a big giant piece of lead water line that was taken out of the ground here in Colgrove. At one point, there was water running through this pipe going to somebody's house.
Oh my God.
So obviously less and less of this stuff showing up. Wheel weights are a great option. Tires, they normally have to pay to discard that stuff, so they normally will give it to you. Another option is that basins if you buy really high end stuff, if you make friends with people that do home renovations and things, some of the really high end, real more fancy houses would have the tub basins for a shower that would be lead, like hundreds of pounds of lead. But there's places you can buy it in ingots from places like Do It Molds will sell you giant ingots like this. But the best thing to do, obviously, is to find it You can see here's this giant amount of wheel weights. Now I will tell you one thing to look at. Some wheel weights that look like this are made out of steel. They're not going to work for you. You got to have lead, obviously. And some of them will look like this right here. And if you can see it, this has a rubberized coating on it.
Mm.
Do not use these things. The rubber, obviously, first off, lead's terrible for you. Take that for what it's worth, but I try not to have rubber and lead, in my lungs. Lead is plenty. But some of these things will be pure lead like this, but they do have these clips on top of it. Normally, these clips will float when you put them in your lead pot. So finding the lead, obviously half the battle. So with that being said, I got this little torch going on right here. You guys can hopefully see. Yep, you guys can see that. So I have this shaky head going on here. What's up, Tyler? I'm gonna put this thing in this flame, and if you hold this thing on here long enough, this lead will melt and it'll end up on your shoes. So don't do that. Get it hot, dip it in that powder paint. You can see that
Look, dip. That looks cool, man.
when I dip, you dip, we dip. Put my hand up on your head. Obviously, some baits are different than others. For example, if I grab this big giant 3/4 ounce weight here, it takes a lot longer to heat up in the torch.
Mm-hmm.
If you do this enough, you could put this in the torch, and first off, put the heat towards the back. If you start going towards the front of this one, you're just going to melt the little socket that these wire weed guards right here will just melt.
Uh-oh. Tyler's skipping. Can you guys still hear me? I don't know. I assume it's probably his connection there. Well, I feel like we're all kind of stuck into this being bored during this cold weather. I don't know if, where everybody's listening at, if it's like that where you guys are at, but we've had like the coldest weather that we've had in Kentucky, West Virginia, and Ohio for the longest time. So, what are you guys doing right now to get back in the swing of things to go fishing? Currently, I have definitely taken apart all of my rods and reels at this point. I took off all of the old line. One way that I've kind of looked into it is I typically try to make my line last a whole year. Doesn't always happen, but I use a lot of Seagar Gold Label, and I've had pretty good luck with that. I know a lot of people have their preferences. A lot of them are pretty much the same to me. I've had bad luck with some, good luck with others, but sometimes I think it's just the conditions the line's put in. But I've peeled all the line off and gone to the oiling and cleaning up all of the other. Sorry, I'm trying to send Tyler the link back in here again. And it is actually doing that kind of protects your reels and your rods, and it's kind of an easy thing to do. So post in the comments if you guys are getting into right now. I know my buddy Ben is really into duck hunting right now, and that's kind of his thing to do in the short term. But I know one thing, it's killing me to not be able to fish at all. Tyler, man, yeah, I definitely hope to. I'm my buddy wants me to go back down to Rayburn with him, which Rayburn is a long haul, and of course that's a long haul and a lot of time. But I definitely want to get back down there. I mean, Rayburn is just a beautiful, beautiful fishery. Our bot's
And I'm
back,
back.
Tyler. SRB Botman's back, Tyler.
So wait, dude, man, I tell you what, beautiful life.
It's a beautiful life, bro. Awesome life. Well, you're blocked. I'm glad you showed me how to do that. Tyler,
dude's
where are you
probably
going
like,
this year, man? We going back to Dale Holler? That was a pretty brutal trip.
I'm gonna go to Chick and win 100,000.
Oh gosh, I would love to. Fred's on. He's saying he's cleaning up the reels, respooling. He likes the Seagar Braze X.
Oh yeah,
Which one's a Braze X? Is that the red label, the yellow label?
that's both of them. They're making a Braze X red and yellow.
Well, Lord.
I think. Don't quote me on that. I'm pretty sure though. I have been wrong a lot. But anyway, pouring up these jigs here. Again, you can tell that I'm heating the backside of this jig up. If you do this enough, you can actually watch this jig almost liquefy. When you get to the point where this thing's almost about to melt, this jig will get very, very clear. See that smoke coming off there?
Mm-hmm.
Or very, not clear, but it will get very shiny and smooth. At that point, this jig is done now. There is another step when it comes to powder painting jigs. I don't do this personally because I throw a pile of jigs and I lose a bunch of jigs, and it's really not worth it probably in the grand scheme of things. But if you powder paint something that's going to be bottom contact, which 90% of the baits that I pour are jigs, the only thing that I really pour that's not bottom contact is going to be something like a blade bait, or I think pretty much just a blade bait. But it's going to get chipped up. Uh, I was told by a fellow this past weekend that there is some stuff called stardust, I think it was, that will cause or allow you to have some stuff that's not chipped or won't. It's pretty much indestructible, but it takes a little bit more time. But in my opinion, I just pour them, powder paint them, and go with it. But you can take these things after they're powder painted, put them in a toaster oven, which don't do it in your house. Your wife or girlfriend will kill you. It stinks like crazy too. Um, but you can put these in an oven, crank it up to 350 degrees, and let this thing bake for about 25 to 30 minutes, or about 20 minutes really. And then when the oven goes off, the timer goes off, just leave the baits in the oven and let them cool down naturally inside that oven. And it actually will cause this powder paint, this Protect from Do It, to harden even more. Now,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm selling baits like I did this past weekend, I normally go through that process because it's just a better product in the end. But I think, man, I'm not a purist. I think you can throw a lead ball just like this and catch fish on it. I don't think the powder paint does anything more than make you feel good.
I honestly kind of like it. The little bit of flash with it, I think, is kind of nice. So I buy a lot of those, especially swim baits too, because you know that's a lot of the color of a lot of those anyway. But Tyler Williams, are we going to fish the Douglas event this year? I forget what was the date on that. I looked this up when Chris got on there last week. But I would definitely like to. I've never fished Douglas. Honestly, I would love to hear some good things about Douglas because I always hear bad things about Douglas. But I mean, I think it May 3rd. Oof, May 3rd. I think I'm actually on vacation. Let me think.
Yeah,
No, I'm thinking of March, April. Yeah. So I don't have anything for May 3rd yet, but I would love to. Can't beat that organization.
I would love to fish it, obviously, too. But those of you guys know, I got a really crazy, huge trip planned here in a couple months. Leaving the day before Good Friday, obviously that Thursday. going out west. Packing up my things and I'm gonna head out west with real rim and comic crip with scripts and fate. Oh, wait a minute. But no, I'm seriously going out west. But the deal is, the reason I tell you guys that, I don't know if I'll be fishing that tournament or not, because that is going to be one very expensive trip. Which, by the way, I want to give a shout out to somebody pretty special that jumped on the trip sponsorship list the other day. That was Miss Hannah Sublett she's an insurance broker from local. She's locally here, sells life insurance and health insurance. I'll be adding her logo to the list of companies down below here after today. But she come on board with a massive donation to the trip fund. So I want to shout out her. She's helping me out a lot. Again, Hannah Sublett. She is down around the Greenup Dam area, but she, I think, is licensed in all 3 states: Kentucky, Ohio, West Virginia. But she is graciously helping me out on the trip. The deal is that we're looking at leaving on the Thursday before Good Friday, driving to Bull Shoals, fishing one day at Bull Shoals to catch a fish, hopefully in Missouri and Arkansas. Then we're going to go west to Ten Killer in Oklahoma, hopefully to catch a bass in Oklahoma there. And if we are lucky enough to catch a bass in all 3 of those states, we're going to go southwest to Lake Fork in Texas. And we're going to spend 2 or 3 days there, depending on how much time I have. And then eventually head back northeast home. But we're going to stop at Caney Creek in Louisiana to fish a day or 2 there. So it's going to be a very expensive trip. Gas alone is going to be crazy. But I told you guys last week I'm looking at buying a rooftop tent for my truck. So I'm really excited about that, and I'll be looking into that before then. But a lot of that, big giant story to tell you that I probably won't be fishing the Douglas event.
Well, I would love to do it. So I don't know, maybe me and somebody else can get into it. It's a 1-day tournament, which is appealing too. I guess it's something that I would definitely have to lean on somebody that's more familiar with that fishery, but I would love to go there. I mean, again, if you guys have heard good things about Douglas, I would love to hear, because daggone everybody tells me, oh, Douglas is terrible. Douglas is terrible. So I've always kind of, gone elsewhere. That's a big reason I went down to Chick and went to Gunnersville instead, just because I hear so many negative things about Douglas now. But honestly, it has to be better than Yatesville.
I think that a lot of the naysayers. So first off, you have Cherokee down there that's really close too, and I've fished Cherokee. Cherokee is the only time I've ever been there. It was really tough, but I was fishing with Drew Sadler from Shimano, and he caught the heck out of him, man. We were throwing jigs, and he didn't smash them. We was out there pre-fishing for a tournament for G. Loomis the next day, and for Shimano, and he caught one 5.5 pound smallmouth there. And I know they have those BFLs and stuff down there. I think Matt Robertson just about won that bass event down there a couple years ago.
Yeah, I think Brent really likes Cherokee over Douglas. So I heard that too, because I remember when we were down there at Del Hollow, basically they looked at each other and said, I wish it was a Cherokee, not a Douglas. But Fred is asking, is baking after powder painting worth it, Tyler?
I don't believe so, to be honest with you. Does it make a difference? Yes, it will. It makes the powder paint a lot harder.
Harder, right?
A lot less susceptible to chipping. But again, if you think about the amount of time that it takes, and it's not a giant undertaking, guys. Like I said, you literally buy yourself. I mean, you can get on the Facebook Marketplace right now, or just on your Facebook friends list, and say, "Hey, I'm looking for a toaster oven." Everybody buys a toaster oven, or usually what happens is people get married and they get a toaster oven for for a wedding present, and they make toast in it like 4 times, so it's still like brand new, and then it gets put into a closet somewhere, and nobody touches it forever, and then you're looking for it, and you post on Facebook or ask one of your buddies, you say, I'm looking for a toaster oven. Next thing you know, you got 48 of them in your garage. Ask me how I know. I bet I got 8 of them here in this garage, or not 8 of them. I'd say I got 4 at least.
Hey, Tyler, can I borrow a toaster oven?
Yeah, I got you. But you know, you have those racks in those toaster ovens. You're just going to take these things and hang them on the rack just like this. Make sure they're not touching each other, because what's going to happen is this powder paint is going to liquefy again, and it will, as it is cooling down in that natural cooling down process, basically it's going to temper this thing to make this thing more susceptible or less susceptible to chipping. But I personally, I've done it before. I've done it 100 times. And here's another reason that I don't do it is that if you don't get your jig hot enough, see if I got one up here that's kind of like this. If you don't get your jig hot enough, the paint will stick in the eye of the hook. I'm sure
That's
I got
annoying.
one somewhere. You can kind of see it here. It's not quite full, but if you can see this eye of this hook, it's almost choked off.
Yeah.
And if you don't bake this, you can take an old junk hook or even an eye buster and put this thing in here and kind of work it around back and forth.
Son, you're wallering it.
Yeah, that's right. And you can see that I open it up a good bit by doing that. If you bake your paint with paint in the eyes of your jig, you are going to regret it. It almost destroys the jig to where you can't get it. Here's one that's totally full. If you look right here, how this jig has paint all in the eye.
Yeah.
If this jig was baked like this, you'd almost have to take a drill bit to get that thing out of there. So in my opinion, does it make it look better? Yes. Does it function better? No. Does it add a little bit longevity to the finish so it's not chipped off? It does, but not a great deal, I don't think. Again, if I'm selling baits, if I'm making these to sell, I will do it just for the simple fact is I want people to get a quality product. But for myself, you know, especially something like a shaky head, if I was throwing like a big 3/4 ounce jig, something like this right here that has a lot of surface area on the head of it to chip around, I would probably do that. But that's one of the main reasons that I chose to use this little vein paint, because it already looks like it's chipped. Always thinking. But again, before I got kicked off there, I lost service for some reason. My Wi-Fi router is literally right here, or one of them. What I was saying about making sure that you put heat on the backside away from your hook, especially when you have wire weed guards like these, you're going to heat back here. And again, if you really watch this thing, you will see it. It's kind of rough and stuff right now, you can see. But if you get this thing hot enough, this thing will get to a point where it's almost going to melt. Literally, I could hold this thing in here and eventually it'll melt. I think lead melts at like 780 degrees, something like that Fahrenheit. So this torch definitely gets hot enough for that to happen. But if you hold this in this torch, and by the way, I use the torch because it's a lot quicker. You can go to, matter of fact, I've done it for years. You can go to Harbor Freight and get one of their really cheap heat guns. It works just perfect for this stuff. I've done it for years. It just takes a little bit longer to get the jig hot enough. And again, that if you're seeing smoke like that, it's actually a little bit too hot, but eventually it'll be all right. So again, you can see that with this little piece of this piece of pipe that I have, what it is it's called a fluid bed. And I was mentioning it earlier, and I forgot that air pump, that aerator pump from just a fish tank, an aquarium. it pumps air through the bottom of something I made myself. So this just has a little brass nipple in here. And then there's nothing more than a piece of brown paper sack, which are really tough to find anymore. But if you're in local to my area and you shop at White's Meat Market in Ashland, they always give out these things. These, just a brown paper grocery sack works absolutely fantastic. Some people will tell you to use a couple coffee filters. Stay away from those. They let too much air through. But just a brown paper sack. I have, I think this is called a union. It's a male threaded union, and then just a piece of, I think these are 1.5 inch pipe. But I just made this so air goes through that piece of brown paper sack, and then you have paint in this area right here, and that air causes that paint to almost act like a fluid. That's why it's called a fluid bed. Now, what happens is when you get your jig hot enough and you dip it in that bed of that fluid bed, it's not a big, solid, compact thing of paint, right? It's just like having paint molecules suspended in air. So basically, you're dipping this through there, and it's going to get as thin of a layer of paint on there as possible. Now, that does two things. One, it saves the amount of paint that you're going to use, and two, it makes sure that it doesn't get in the eye and get all clogged up. If I were to, we'll just do one here instead of having um, that fluid bed. I'm just going to dip it straight into this big giant thing of paint here, which is the same paint that's in here. It's just going to be all solidified. So I'm going to do the exact same thing that I've been doing. I'm going to get this jig hot, and I'm going to dip it straight into this vat of paint here, not a fluid bed. You can see that there is a ton of paint just globbed all over that thing.
Mm-hmm.
You can also see that the eye of the hook is being covered up. Just grabbed a small toothpick here and I'm pushing this through here, and that works just fine, right? If this is the only option that you have, this would work, except I just put a pile of paint on this jig that wasn't really needed. So we'll grab another one here and I'll show you with the fluid bed the difference. Again, I just got a 1/2 ounce jig here, putting it up in. Again, make sure you're heating from the backside away from the hook. When you cut that sprue off, it has a little like a nub there. This right here is, other than being burnt, is the most dangerous part in my opinion. I've done this before and got the file stuck to the lead and literally pushed a jig through one of my fingers. 0 out of 10, do not recommend.
Yeesh. So Fred got me thinking about what type of line and why. And I think me and Tyler are a little bit more simple on this. We kind of pick one type and go with it on everything. I know a lot of guys that actually go to different types of line for each of their applications. Some for some different ones for spinning, different ones for when they're using cranking, and some for other. So let us know in the comments as to why and what line you choose. Maybe you'll teach us something on something maybe we think is not important, maybe is very important.
Yeah, I can give you the rundown on what I use. My line arsenal is very simplistic. I fish Power Pro braid and Sunline fluorocarbon, and there's no in between. If I am throwing a spinning rod, it's going to have Power Pro Super Slick V2 on it. Matter of fact, I just ordered a 2,500 yard spool of it yesterday. I use 15-pound test for my spinning rods. You could get away with using something smaller than that. I just like the 15-pound test, the way that it looks. I also use something that's really very, very visible. I use Power Pro Super Slick V2, but I use the Moonshine edition, which is really actually a line that's designed for night fishing and having a black light on your boat. But I like the ability to see my line on top of the water. I see a lot of fish eating baits, especially like if I'm throwing a wacky rig or something. I can see that line jump when a fish hits it. Um, I also have like Onyx, which is a black version of that, and it gets very tough to see, especially if it's a little bit windy at all. But normally, like I'll run 15-pound Sunline, or I'm sorry, 15-pound Power Pro to like an 8-pound fluorocarbons FC Sniper leader. But if I'm throwing, braid, it's going to be Power Pro, anywhere from 85-pound test down to 15, depending on what rod I'm throwing on, and anywhere from 16. I don't go any higher than 16-pound. I'm probably going to grab some like 25-pound test this year to put on a glide bait rod, fluorocarbon. But other than that, it's usually 16-pound test if I'm flipping and pitching, and 12-pound tests are running the rest of the gamut.
Yeah, I think I'm pretty simple when it comes to it. That Seagar Gold labels, which is InvisX. I had to look that up because I forgot the name of it. For almost all my fluorocarbon, I do have a fair amount of P-Line Tactical. Personally, I really like that as well. I've done that buy one get one free there like almost every time they have that at Borders. Because it's such a good deal, and I mean it's really good line. I think it's the one that Brian Thrift advertises for, and then for the other, I use that Super Slick Power Pro V2 as well. I love that braid. I think it is really smooth, easy to cast, less wind knots. I don't know if you guys have wind knots when you go up north. I mean, I get them like crazy. Drives me nuts. So I'm definitely happy, and I feel like I have reduced that. A lot of the times I'll use 15 or 10-pound to an 8-pound leader if I'm drop shotting, or if I have a really light jig, I might use 6-pound on the fluoro leader. The most I would ever go is 10, but I would say 90% of the time, 95% of the time, I'm going 15 to 8, similar to what Tyler was speaking of. And then cranking rods, normally 12-pound InvisX, jerk bait, 10-pound InvisX. And then if I am using a bottom contact bait or a spinner bait, or it keeps going, or a bladed jig, I'm going to use 15-pound. Hey, he's back again.
Guess who's back? Shady's back. So anyway, powder
Ace
painted
is
all the
back.
jigs. Ace is back. Next thing, if I have wire weed guards in them, I don't have to worry about putting weed guards in them. But these do not. This is a do it mold hybrid grass jig, one of my favorite jigs on the absolute planet. You can fish it as a swim bait or like a swim jig or bottom contact too.
Redneck label cigar, I like it.
So when you powder paint jigs, those little cavities get fogged up with powder paint. So I take a little jig a drill with a little drill bit. Be careful doing that too, because you get this thing caught up. You'll have this thing in your hand before you know it. Also, I just use some super glue. This is Star Bond, thick. I like thick because I can see where it goes. You're just going to put a small drop in there. You don't have to fill the thing up, because if you do, it's just going to squirt out everywhere. Just taking a fiber weed guard here. I'm using black for this one. I have clear and green pumpkin as well. Is there any color preference? For me, probably not. Obviously, it depends on the skirt that you're going to be working on. So that kind of does it for that. And then you have the eyes there. And again, most of the stuff that I do for myself, I do not put eyes on, just for the simple fact that I don't feel like that they have the time that it takes to put this on here versus the amount of fish that is going to bite it or not bite it, just due to the fact of the eyeball being there. I just don't think it has a huge difference in it. So got some eyeballs here that's on a card. Literally, you're going to grab your trusty old super glue. You want to super glue these things on here. If you don't, the eyes will last about 8 seconds. As soon as you hit the first dock or you drag it across something in the water, the eyeballs go away. I know you guys are not
Micah
seeing
asks, why not the Shimano fluorocarbon? So that's massive. And I think, long story short, we just haven't really heard very many good things about it. I haven't used it myself.
I have not used it. I do know from feeling it, and this is, my own personal opinion. I feel like it's a lot stiffer than fluorocarbon or than Sunline. I feel like, in my opinion, and again, I'm not talking bad about Shimano, obviously, because let's face it, they're my bread and butter. But I just feel like that they're a lot more. It's a lot more susceptible to having line memory in it, and I could be wrong, but it just feels stiffer to me, and I would much rather have that Sunline that I've known and love. But this year, I may potentially pick up some Mastiff and try it out and give you guys my opinion. So you guys can see now that there's eyeballs on this jig. Again, just a little bit of super glue, and there is literally the last thing to do is to grab a skirt and put it on this jig. Now, there's one thing that I didn't know going forward or going into this, that there's 100 different ways you can make jig skirts. You can make them yourself using tabs, similar to these are jig skirt tabs. This is how jig skirt material is made in these little, what they call tabs. You can put this thing on here and you can tie them like you're tying flies, which I do sometimes. You can also get your own tool to put the skirts on there, which I'm not sure where mine's at, but I do have one of those tools somewhere that will allow you to put the those tabs together. Right here is it. You're gonna start out with just a collar. This is similar, just a skirt collar. And these things are super old. These things look like crap. This is all old stuff. A buddy of mine bought out an old tackle shop that was in Florida, and a lot of this stuff came with it. So there's this little tool here, kind of like a wacky rig tool, but it has this metal tip that goes on there first, and that's how you're going to get these skirt collars started up on the tool. Similar to a wacky rig, you have this now tool that's there. You're given this little hook right here with the tool. What you're going to need are those couple of tabs of skirt material. Put this thing through there. Hook the ends of these two tabs. I'll show you here when I get a hold of it better. Hook the ends of those tabs through that. You're going to pull this thing back through the tool. There is a measurement on here, but you're then going to take this little skirt collar, put it over top of your skirt, and then you will take scissors and trim this off, and then you have a skirt. Now, I buy my skirts pre-rigged. Somebody has already done that for me. But one of the things that you can definitely tell is that one side of this jig skirt, this one right here is shorter compared to this one right here is much longer. The longer side goes up when you're putting a jig skirt on. So long side up, let it droop over your fingers. You're gonna put it through that skirt collar, up over your bait keepers. And that right there, my friends, is literally how you make a jig.
Cherry Coke. I'd call that one Cherry Coke.
It's pretty good. I didn't even know I had these skirts, but I like it a lot. I like it a lot.
Yeah, Micah, if I was going in real deep, I would go all Gamma. Gamma line is like got the best reputation. Fred says Abrazex 8 pound spinning rods, 10 cranking, 12 spinner cranking, 17 for flipping. So my tip is buying it on sale. Good call, man. And then Micah said, do you prefer silicone or living rubber or both together? I think the majority of what I've used has been silicone, but honestly, I feel like that's because I'm not one of these, old school fishermen that came into everything living rubber, and I've just not had the experience with living rubber, to be completely honest.
I think they both have a time and place. I like living rubber a lot because
colder water.
Well, it just flares out more, right? No matter what, if you just put this jig down here, if it has living rubber on it, it's going to flare out because it floats, right? The living rubber floats more than the silicone does. I buy 99% of all my jig skirts are silicone, just for the simple fact that I normally throw jigs 100% of the year. Like I'll throw a jig if it's 14 degrees out, or I'll also throw a jig if it's 114 out. Like I don't discriminate. So I will throw a jig whenever. But I just like the fact that if I'm throwing a jig, I like the more small, compact, like almost like air, hydrodynamicness of it, so you can see the trailer that you have. Now, for example, if you're throwing something like a Blue Rock Custom Tackle, one of their triple threat jigs, or 1099 triple threat, something like that has some flair to it. I've been known to throw something like that. What do we have here?
Coleslaw.
I don't, dude. A lot of these baits right here, like this stuff right here, was bought from that old fellow that was down in Florida.
Mm-hmm.
And this dude poured spinner baits that I wouldn't throw here in Ohio. They're so big.
3/4 ounce, right?
Yeah, they're not even, it's not even realistic. And he liked very bright collars. Either that or it's just all he had left because nobody, look at that thing. Look at that. Now, let me just show you what one of my actual 1/4 ounce spinner baits look like with an actual. So this is the entire bait of my spinner bait. Look at this thing. This swallows that thing. Yeah. Speaking of which, I know a lot of people messaged me the other day about being able to buy some spinner baits from me. I'm getting stocked back up. Pardon the garage. It's extremely dirty. Check out the old 1973 CB 750 Honda. Love that thing. We got a 2015 Harley Street Glide Special. But back here, you can see there's a pile of spinner baits back here. I have probably this many or more inside as well. I got probably 50 more over there. A lot of different stuff here. Got some buzz baits. You guys are These things flew off the shelf. They're off the handle the other day at that tackle show. I had triple this amount, sold the crap out of them. So thank you guys for coming out to that. It was a big deal. I sold almost $400 worth of baits the other day. Spinner baits, by the way, are $7 a piece. Buzz baits are $6, and jigs are $5 a piece. And I feel like that's kind of on average about what everybody's selling their spinner baits for. Some people are selling spinner baits for $10 a piece. I just don't see $10 worth of work and product being there. So $7. I will tell you the biggest thing about spinner baits, the reason they're more expensive than anything else, is that the swivels on a spinner bait alone are $2 a piece. That's my cost. So that's crazy.
Mark, if you're having line twist, are you throwing it from braid to fluoro, or are you throwing straight fluoro? Because if you're getting, I think the key there is definitely going from braid to fluoro. It helps your castability. Your leader is only going to be 7-8 feet, and it helps me a lot with line twist. Definitely, if you're putting straight fluoro on a rod, that'll definitely get a lot of line twist. So I think having it from braid to fluoro with a fluoro leader is definitely a way to help with that.
Another thing is that I learned the hard way when I was a kid, and I'm now trying to teach Misty the ins and outs of it, is the fact that if you cast a spinning rod and you just take the handle and crank it over to like make the bail go over so you can reel it, what's happening is when you do that, that bail spins at least one full time before it clicks over usually. And what you're doing when you do that is you're introducing line twist every time that happens. So one thing that I have learned over the years is that if I want to try to make sure that I have less line twist in my line, especially on spinning rods, cast the rod, wait until it hits the water, and then flip the bail over with my hand before I start reeling it. That's helped a lot.
Better for the reel too.
Well, the way I look at it, I spend anywhere from $300 to $600 on spinning reels. They ought to be able to take it.
Oh, yeah, that's for sure. Well, we just hit the 53-minute mark, so if you guys have anything else to talk about or add, we're more than willing. But it's getting about to that time for me to pass out, and I think the cold air is probably helping keeping Tyler awake at this point. But that puppy dog's getting kind of mad and snoring intermittently because I've not taken him to bed yet. I think Tyler froze again. Well, guys, I appreciate you coming on, and hit us up on all of our social media. And I know Tyler's posted a couple new videos recently, so check those out. And as Tyler was saying before, we've had a lot of people, especially on Facebook, with a lot more ads and subscribers. So it's really exciting. And, of course, the more participation, the more we're going to come back with more stuff. So it just kind of makes us excited for it. So hopefully you guys can get out there and at least watch, go down to Florida and lean on a few fish. But up here is solid ice. So we're going to go ahead and say bye for now, and see you next time on Another Line.
Thank you for tuning in to this episode of On Another Line Live. We truly appreciate your support, and we couldn't do it without all the amazing folks at home watching week after week. A big thank you goes out to our sponsors, who help make this show possible: Malone's Marine, Borders Sporting Goods, Solar Bat Sunglasses, Picasso Lures, Shimano, and Columbia Sportswear. Their partnership allows us to keep bringing you the content you love. We'll see you next time on Another Line. Until then, get out there and lean on them.